All right, hey, what's up guys, GratuiTous here from itsgratuitous.com. In this FL Studio tutorial, we're going to be talking about the difference between mixing and mastering your music. Before getting into the video, if you guys would like to learn FL Studio, check out my free book called 5 Keys to a Successful Beat. So simple it becomes creative. Get it by going to itsgratuitous.com/5 keys. All right, so talking about mixing and mastering, just quickly. So mixing is when we are taking the individual instruments. For example, I have a piano here, another type of sound. So the audio is being routed to what's called a mixer insert, all right? And then here we can be applying effects. So here I have an EQ. This is a third-party plugin, which means very often a third-party plugin is paid, but you can get free ones out there. But again, always just be careful when it comes to third-party plugins that you're bringing into your music program because you have to update them. They can be buggy. It's always important to just get good tools, okay? So the audio is coming to a mixer track, and then we can mix it here. We can adjust the volumes, we can apply effects on, all right? And then I want you to follow the cable down here, and it goes all the way to what's called the master, okay? So if you look at every single one of these channels, these mixer channels, and again, so if I come to like this one right here, it goes to 11. It's being mixed on 11. As you can see, I have an EQ, I have a compressor, I have another EQ, I have what's called a multi-band compressor, and I have another EQ, all right? Each track is different, each instrument in the track is different, and when it comes to your mixing, most of the time it's just like a personal choice, but the whole goal is to try to make each instrument stand out audibly, all right? And so that is like the mixing. We take all of our individual sounds, whether again they're pianos or kicks, right? You can see that one's going to 17. And then I have what's called a subgroup, all right? So these are all mixing terms that you will eventually want to learn to be able to mix really well and easily. And you can see that 17 is actually going to 16. We go to 18, that is also going to 16. We go to 19, you can see it's also going to 16. And so this is called a subgroup. And you can see 16 is going all the way to the master. So we will talk about mastering in just a second. So everything is coming into the mixer from our channel rack. And again, every DAW is different, but this is specifically to FL Studio users. But we are taking our sounds, putting them to individual mixer inserts, then all of that goes to the master, and this is where mastering happens. Okay, mastering, we are very, very subtle in our moves. We're kind of bringing up the overall loudness, getting a nice commercial polished sound before it's actually released, okay? Now, in the real world, mastering actually has a couple purposes. So most of the time when you're watching tutorials, it's all about, kind of making the music loud and polished and commercial sounding. But in the real world, we're also entering like metadata for your ISRC codes and stuff like that. So if you are sending it out to the public, that you can make your royalty income off of it. But when it comes to mastering, you will hear what's called a mastering chain. Everyone does different things in their mastering chain, and essentially that just means the order that your plugins are in. So for example, you can put your compressor first and an EQ first, or whatever you want to do there. Like as you can see, I have a single band compressor, I have a multi-band compressor, I have gross beat actually on the master, but you can see in FL Studio, the mix knob is all the way to 0, and I bring it in only sometimes, and I'll actually share that with you just here quickly. So here is this track. It's an unreleased track. It is called The Scapegoat. So it's on right now. So you hear like that kind of like that vinyl scratch. So I actually have to go back, so. All right, so that is from gross beat right here. So it's on 7. So this is like the vinyl scratch. And I believe I only put like my mix knob just a little bit. That way it's not super, super intense. And then later on, I also have it come back in. And so I put this on the master because I want this audio manipulation plugin affecting the whole track. That's why it's on the master, and I'm only bringing it in when I want. And I do that just to have full control over it. So again, watch right here, because right now it's disabled, right? Like right now, like the whole song would be playing like normally. We're hearing good audio. And then once gross beat comes in, we are manipulating it. So not yet, it's coming. Okay, here we go. And then as you can see, it turns off. Okay, so by me doing that, it just really added some kind of cool background, kind of like vinyl scratches, and all that was off of Gross Beat. Okay, so let's go through that again a little bit. So first of all, we're on 8, so you actually kind of hear it drop out. We'll go to the next one. So it's basic 1. It does like a little stair step down, so it's like a duplicator. And as you can see, I just did a couple other kind of repeating kind of sounds. So, all right. So again, that's just Gross Beat. And then on the master, I just put like a light EQ. So when we are mastering, we are usually doing like very subtle stuff like 0.3 and stuff like that. Whereas in mixing, let's see if I did much on the drum. I actually didn't. Well, -5. So as you can see, -5 is a lot more than -1, right? Another thing too that can be deceiving when it comes to mixing and mastering is you can see I'm in -12. That's our scale. And watch, if I go like -30, it's like, well, that doesn't look very big, right? But then if you come here to 3, it's like, well, that looks like a big cut now. Come back here to the master. And again, so I'm on 3. So that means I'm really zoomed in, and this is quite subtle. So if I go to like 30, you can see it's like, oh, I barely even moved it. So the scale can be quite deceiving as well. But all I'm trying to say is in mastering, we are typically being very, very subtle in our moves. This is called a mastering chain. Best practice is always to have the limiter last. We are typically putting the output. So I'll bring it over. We were putting at the moment of the industry, because this has always changed, the output is, you don't want your audio distorting. You want it to be loud, but you don't want audible distortion, because there is intentional distortion. For example, if we are mixing our music, you can see I have routed this to what's called a send or a parallel track. It is going to distortion, and I'm using the Fruity Blood Overdrive. I use a lot of stock plugins as well as third-party plugins. Okay, but you can see that I'm sending it to the drums to distortion. What that's doing is it is intentional. I want distortion on the drums, makes them sound fuller, makes them hit a little bit harder, okay? But then there's unwanted distortion, such as if you're pushing your master too loud, then your whole music sounds distorted in a bad way. There is also pleasing distortion, which is what I was talking about with the drum, how it's routed to distortion. On the master track, as you can see, I put it to -1, and then you can kind of boost it up. And we'll just take a peek at how loud this track is. Again, this track is not released, and it's kind of really rough at the moment. Okay, so it is a bit hot, but it's not really hitting that limiter too hard. We can check out my clipper. This is another mastering tool. I'm not hitting it too hard. Check out my compressor. Maybe compressing a bit hard. But it sounds pretty balanced. All right, so again, so just a quick recap again. So in the mixing stage, we are taking our individual sounds, whether it is what's called a virtual instrument, such as FL keys, which is an awesome piano plugin. A lot of people don't like FL keys, but they just don't know how to use it very well. So I'm playing FL keys right here. So to me, like, that's a beautiful piano, and I have it set up well. We have our virtual instruments. Each instrument or each sound will get like its own pattern. So for example, like the drum loop, you can see I have like my drum loop going on. This is one pattern, the drum loop. Here is the keys, that's one pattern. You know, the staccato is one pattern. Then each instrument gets its own mixer insert. So here's 7. Okay, we can apply our own mixing however we want. And then what happens is all of them come into the master, right? You can see that 7 is coming to the master. And then on the master, this is where we're actually hearing the audio out on 1 and 2. This is where we are applying subtle moves, such as subtle compression, subtle EQ. There's lots of different mastering tools you could be using. And this is called your mastering chain. And you are just trying to really increase the loudness of your audio, but you still want it to sound nice and commercial and polished. You want it to be loud. You don't want it to be too loud. You're looking for like that sweet spot. Okay, so I hope that helps you understand kind of like the differences between mixing and mastering, as well as some examples. If you guys would like to learn FL Studio and how to make beats, you guys can check out my website. It's gratuitous.com. Thanks for checking out the video, and I'll talk to you in the next one.